From London, I'm John Weeks, and this is The Standard. On today's show, our Homes and Property Deputy Editor, India Block, reviews the new Netflix reality show, Buying London. But before that, inflation has dropped to just over 2%, the target Prime Minister Rishi Sunak has been aiming for to slow down the rate that prices are increasing.
Well, thanks to everyone's hard work and resilience, today we reached a major milestone and inflation is back to normal. And that is an important moment for our country, for the economy, and shows that our plan is working.
Back in October 2022, when he became PM, UK inflation was at a 41-year high of 11.1%, hugely impacting the cost of things like food and energy. In a statement this morning, he said this is proof that the plan is working and that the difficult decisions we have taken are paying off.
But I am conscious as well that there is more work to do. People are only just starting to feel the benefits, and that's why it's important that we do stick to this plan so that we can continue to deliver a secure future for everyone. But these things don't happen by accident. I came into office with a plan to bring down inflation. That plan is working, and if we stick to it, there are brighter days ahead.
So, just how significant is this latest drop in inflation? And does back to normal mean we'll see prices easing anytime soon? Joining me now is our political editor, Nicholas Cecil. So Nick, happy days. Inflation is back to normal, as the PM says. Should we all be celebrating?
Well, it's not quite back to normal. Normal, or certainly the Bank of England's target for inflation is 2%. And some Tory MPs were hoping that today, the Office for National Statistics figures would show that it reached that level of 2%. In fact, it didn't. It reached 2.3%. So it fell from 3.2% in March to 2.3% in April. So that's in the right direction. But the city was hoping for better and ended up being slightly spooked by the news. And so it's not quite as rosy as Mr. Sunak would have wanted. Chancellor Jeremy Hunt was quite frank about the situation. He was saying it's welcome news, but still admitting that for many people out there, in his words, life is tough. They're struggling financially, and admitting that people's living standards won't return to pre-pandemic levels until early next year, according to the Office for Budget Responsibility. Now, that is politically important because the general election will happen either in the summer, the autumn, or the very latest by January. So by then, when people go to the polls, their living standards, certainly for many of them, will still be below that they were before the pandemic hit.
That's it. And obviously, Rishi's been targeting this drop to 2% for a while. Why is 2 the magic number when it comes to inflation?
2% is the Bank of England's target. So when the Monetary Policy Committee decides interest rates, its main aim is to get inflation at 2%, so certainly not above. So that's what the bank aims for. And certainly ministers were hoping for maybe 2, possibly even 3 interest rate cuts before the general election. The first one had been penciled in by the markets for June. Now they think it's more likely to happen later in the year, possibly September even.
And you sort of touched on the cost of living crisis and the state of things in a few months' time. Obviously, on the face of it, it's good news that inflation is down. But are we looking at a long-term picture for things like price changes in the supermarkets, for example?
Well, the thing with inflation falling, the important thing to remember is that even if inflation is falling, prices are still going up. Because inflation is a measure of how much prices go up by. And for many people, they may have mortgage rises, they may have rent rises. So many people will not be actually feeling any better. And then the Chancellor admitted this. He was open about this. So what the Conservatives are hoping for is that by the time the election is called, that people will either just start to feel that they're better off, or that they'll be able to see the prospect of that happening in the near future. Labour, on the other hand, have a very clear message. They're asking voters, do you feel better off after 14 years of Conservative government? And they expect that a large proportion of voters will say no.
And Rishi Sunak, as you said, is quite chuffed with this result. He says it's proof that his plan is working. Do you think it will give him some extra credit as PM, at least in the public's eyes, ahead of the general election, whenever it is?
I think the one possible thing which could be a slight game changer is if he got these deportation flights off to Rwanda before the general election. Now, this is a very controversial policy, but if he succeeded in doing that, that would please some voters, but it'd also have a broader resonance because he would have shown he can actually deliver something. So people might not like it, but it shows that he's a prime minister delivering on something which he pledged to do.
Let's take a quick break now. Coming up in part 2, our deputy property editor, India Block, reviews the new Netflix reality show, Buying London.
I think it's going to ruffle a few feathers amongst the more traditional agencies in London.
I'm now joined by our deputy property editor, India Block, who's reviewed the new Netflix reality series, Buying London. Touted as a rival to the successful series based in LA, Selling Sunset. So, India, first of all, can you just tell us what is the premise of Buying London?
So it's a office of very attractive estate agents selling some of London and further afield most expensive homes. If you've watched Selling Sunset or any of the spin-offs, then it's very much in that wheelhouse.
And when it comes to these agents specifically, who are they? Where have they come from? And why have they sort of been chosen for this show?
Yeah, so they are all associated with DDRE Global. It's a super prime property business in London. It's only been around for 4 years, and it was founded by Daniel Daggers, who is London born and bred. He styles himself as Mr. Super Prime, and he has assembled a kind of crack team of agents. They're quite different from how you might imagine a London estate agent. For one, there's a lot more women on his team than you'd normally find. And obviously, not his entire team have been cast in the show, and they are very much a cast. So his most camera ready and I suppose prepared to have their personal lives delved into employees, or, well, they're more sort of brokers that use his platform. The main characters, as it are Lauren, who's originally from South Africa. She's our kind of very switched on and super competitive agent. Remy, who's their youngest, she's only just 21, and I mean, it's really exciting to see someone like Remy on a show like this because she's young, she's black, she's not really been in the world of work for very long, so you get to see sort of some of her first big deals. There's Ollie, one of the few boys. He's sort of a wild child who's celebrating his 5th year of sobriety. Is he going to get in trouble again? Rosie, who's very sweet. I think she's been in Made in Chelsea before, so she knows what she's doing when it comes to reality TV. And then there's Raza, who is new to super prime property and is having to learn to adjust to the way that business happens at this end of the market. And Juliana, who's their interiors expert that they've brought in, who's very fun, very Swedish, and has a little flirtation with Ollie that somewhat upsets his wife.
And in terms of the properties in this show, I mean, the ones they show in the trailer look incredible. Were there any properties that surprised you at all?
Not personally, but then I, as a property journalist, get to see inside a lot of these homes quite a lot. So I think it's going to be really interesting to see how the public react to them, because they are some really shiny, blingy properties in there. I think when you're sort of in the industry, you forget how they might look like to other people. So it was really interesting to see what they look like when they're given that sort of Selling Sunset Netflix treatment with the tracking drone shots going through the house. I think it's more just interesting seeing them on that scale.
Do you think a show like this could actually have an impact on London's housing market, potentially making the capital even more desirable, perhaps?
I think that's very much what Daniel Daggers and the DDRE team are hoping. I think London has always been desirable at the super prime end, but it is very expensive and currently not the best sort of place to put your money if you're into avoiding paying the highest taxes. I think it does make it look very desirable. London looks really good in all the B-roll. You sort of forget when you're living here how it might look to an outsider eye. And they've managed to find a lot of sunshine, so kudos to the production team. Whether it will have any impact on the market, I mean, how do you measure that sort of thing? But I think it will get people really talking, and I think it's going to get people thinking about estate agency more. I mean, we don't really love our estate agents here. This is sort of showing a different side of the industry. I wouldn't be surprised if perhaps it makes it a more attractive career option for young people or for people who are interested in people. I think it really shows a different side to the industry.
And you mentioned Selling Sunset. There are a lot of shows like this, aren't there, that are based on property and selling and agents, whether that is the more reality end of the scale or more property end of the scale. Why do you think these kinds of shows are so successful?
Oh, it's definitely just because we love gossip. And I'm not saying that just because I'm a journalist, but, you know, we love Kirsty and Phil and their property shows. We love Grand Designs and Kevin MacLeod, but, you know, they're very serious. They're playing it very straight. We're getting a bit of banter, but we're not getting sort of an insight into their personal lives. I think this genre that Netflix has kind of alighted on as the perfect formula is so addictive because it's not just talking about the properties, it's not just talking about the people buying them, it's getting inside of a lot of office drama. And I think, you know, I've seen the press screeners, that's the most relatable part, that you can work out that you're not the only one who's experiencing, you know, tension with a colleague or office drama. And the homes are there, but they're also the window dressing to a reality scripted storyline about interpersonal drama. And that's what people are most fascinated by.
So obviously you've got Selling Sunsets, which is based in LA. Can London compete with LA?
I think it can. You know, I was worried that perhaps we wouldn't have the scenery for those big pullback drone shots, or we wouldn't have, you know, people prepared to show their homes. We are a lot more private in London, and we don't talk about money as much. We're not, you know, as au fait with that reality TV show gloss and drama. But I think they really managed to find a way to translate that. And, you know, perhaps the British agents aren't going to be giving us the sort of most dramatic moments. But DDRE Global are, you know, obviously selling globally, and they are pushing a different model of estate agency where they put their estate agents in front of the camera more, they put them on social media. I think it's going to ruffle a few feathers amongst the more traditional agencies in London who don't operate like that. But yeah, I think actually we can stand up to that sort of more American brokerage style, and I'll be really interested to see if it changes the nature of the industry.
Pick up the Evening Standard newspaper for more news, interviews and analysis, or head to standard.co.uk. Thanks for listening. We're back tomorrow afternoon at 4 o'clock.